On this Sunday night, crossing into Canada during COVID-19. How many people have tried to get in despite the border closure?
Obviously here in Canada, it's much better than it is in the States.
And closing the loopholes. The grief in an Ontario community.
They were the type of people we should all strive to be.
After a gunman kills 4 members of the same family. Plus, the first election in Canada during COVID, and the votes are coming in early. Plus, why scientists are excited about 2 black holes merging.
Global National with Robin Gill.
Good evening and thank you for joining us. We begin tonight with some surprising figures from the Canada Border Services Agency. Thousands of foreign nationals have tried to get into this country for non-essential reasons, despite those restrictions. The Canada-U.S. border has been closed to most travelers since mid-March. And as Michael Couteur reports, many believe it should stay that way into next year.
Susan Connor and her husband Gary Burnett have been trying to carve out a modest living by selling art in Ottawa's historic Byward Market. This year has been difficult, with the pandemic preventing tourists from coming to Canada.
Our sales are down close to 40%, and I think we're fortunate that that's all it is.
They've seen less foot traffic pass by their stall this summer because of the partial closure of the Canada-U.S. border. However, it seems some people have tested the system. According to statistics from the Canada Border Services Agency, between March 22nd and September 2nd, more than 18,000 foreign nationals were denied entry into Canada because their trips were deemed discretionary. Of those people, a little more than 16,000 were U.S. citizens and more than 2,300 were citizens of other countries arriving from the U.S. Also, over that same period, 448 travelers tried to get into Canada by air, arriving from other foreign countries. In an interview with Global News earlier this week, the leading American expert on infectious diseases questioned the efficacy of the border closure.
You know, sometimes it does have a positive effect of keeping the lid on things, but sometimes, you know, it just doesn't make that much difference. So there is always this argument as to the benefit or not of doing that.
5 Americans with Alaska license plates have been fined for violating the Quarantine Act in British Columbia. They were supposed to take the most direct route back to Washington state, but instead went sightseeing in Vancouver 4 days after entering Canada. Some Canadian doctors believe with a high rate of infection in the U.S., it's better not to reopen the border yet.
When we open the border is a question of considering many factors. I do think that at some point in 2021 it could happen, but I do think it will be in the post-vaccine era.
Now that could be a year away, but Burnett doesn't mind even if his business continues to suffer.
If you don't have health, what do you have?
A simple mantra in such a complicated time. Michael Couteur, Global News, Ottawa.
In tourist hotspot Banff, Alberta, RCMP received more than 240 complaints of cars with U.S. plates this summer. Even with the unwelcome guests and an influx of local tourism in the area, the loss of foreign tourism has taken a major toll on the town. And as Jayme Doll reports, the industry is bracing for more tough days ahead.
So pull it up as high as you can. And then
originally from Australia, this couple is ending their 3-year stint living in Canada, exploring the Rockies.
We were hiking yesterday. I felt like we had the park to ourselves.
Hearing an Australian accent in Banff, as common as the peaks towering above, but not as much these days. COVID-19 travel restrictions hitting the tourism industry harder than any crisis before. A deep uncertainty hovers in the air here as businesses look forward to the season ahead.
We're all suffering. It's not easy. We've been working on hiring all summer long, and things are looking okay. We are going to be using a bit less staff because we are planning maybe not as many snow school programs this winter, not as many other things.
our anxiety levels are rising.
The Radiant Lounge and Stage just opened its doors for the first time in June. The owners admit some days have been steady, others dead quiet.
The fall time used to be when a lot of international travelers would come. A lot of the more mature travelers would take the bus trips in September when it was a little cooler, it was a little quieter, and we're definitely not going to have those this year. So the fear is that we might be a little bit of a ghost town.
Vehicle numbers into the town side of Banff were down 69% in July, 24% in August compared to the summer of 2019.
When we look at our hotel occupancy numbers, July occupancy was about 46%. So typically it's 90+% in July and August. And so that was obviously decreased quite a bit from last year.
It has been a hard summer compared to previous summers. But we're going to move forward. Larch season is coming. Biking is still awesome. The mosquitoes are all dying.
A plus for these travelers, soaking up as much as they can before going into a long quarantine when they return home. Jayme Doll, Global News, Banff, Alberta.
There are more COVID cases being linked to large gatherings in Ontario. This time, it's a wedding. Health officials say 11 people who tested positive can be traced back to events tied to one wedding. The events took place in Toronto, Markham, and the town of Whitechurch Stouffville last weekend. The health authority is working with the family to notify all attendees about the potential exposure. A tightly knit community in Oshawa is reeling for the 4 family members shot dead inside their home on Friday morning. The mother of the family, 50-year-old Loretta Traynor, is the only survivor. The accused gunman is her brother. Her husband, Chris Traynor, taught at the local high school. Their 3 children, Bradley, Adelaide, and 11-year-old Joseph Traynor, were also killed. Tonight, as Morganne Campbell reports, friends young and old are trying to come to terms with the tragedy.
Friends say Chris and Loretta Traynor were high school sweethearts who dedicated their adult lives to education and giving back to their community.
They were incredible people and they had a beautiful family. And if you knew them, you loved them. And you can't not respect who they were for this entire community.
A memorial grows outside of their Oshawa, Ontario home. This is where police say the family was gunned down by Loretta's brother. Officers believe Mitchell Lapa drove from Winnipeg and entered the Traynor's home uninvited early Friday morning with a long gun, killing Chris and 3 of their children and wounding Loretta. Sources tell Global News the shooting may have been over a family will.
What I've met of them, they've been super sweet family, probably the sweetest I've met in a long time.
Chris was a teacher at Monsignor Paul Dwyer Catholic High School, where tributes have been placed outside the main doors. Loretta was a teacher at St. Teresa Catholic School. Flags there have been lowered in her memory.
I don't think our community's ever faced anything like this in the history of our great city. I can't find the right words. We're just absolutely devastated.
The Durham Catholic District School Board has offered support to students and their families, a measure to help people heal from such a tragedy.
When we're in something together, that there are emotions and to connect. However, I would also say it's okay to have some solitude, some self-reflection, some time for self-care as well. And you really want to balance those two.
Meanwhile, more than $71,000 has been raised in support of the surviving members of the Traynor family.
They were the type of people we should all strive to be. If you were any less of a person than what that family modeled, you should be striving for more in your life.
Police haven't released any updates regarding the investigation, but remain here on scene in Oshawa. There's also a police presence in Winnipeg outside of the apartment building where it's believed Lapa lived. Robin?
Morganne Campbell in Oshawa. Jacob Blake spoke from his hospital bed today, sending a message to his supporters that life can change in an instant. Blake is paralyzed from the waist down and is recovering in hospital after being shot 7 times in the back by a police officer in Wisconsin.
Your life, and not only just your life, your legs, something that you need to move around and move forward in life, could be taken from you like this, man.
The shooting has triggered a wave of violent and deadly protests against police brutality and systemic racism in America. Similar protests were sparked in the wake of the death of George Floyd while in police custody nearly 3 months earlier. America's first black vice presidential candidate is condemning the president and his attorney general for denying racial problems exist within the U.S. justice system. Kamala Harris says 2 systems exist and points to the demonstrations that have erupted in the wake of black people being shot by white officers. The president says protesters, not police, are the problem. Here's Jennifer Johnson.
With less than 2 months to go before Election Day, Democratic vice presidential candidate Kamala Harris has come out swinging, blasting U.S. President Donald Trump and his attorney general for denying there's systemic racism in America's legal system in an interview with CNN.
I think that Donald Trump and Bill Barr are spending full time in a different reality. We do have two systems of justice in America.
Harris, the first woman of color to be a vice presidential candidate, is on the attack after statements from both the president and William Barr last week.
I don't think there are two justice systems. The fact of the matter is it's very rare for an unarmed African American to be shot by a white police officer.
President Trump refused to address the issue during a visit to Kenosha, Wisconsin, following the police-involved shooting of Jacob Blake.
We should talk about the kind of violence that we've seen in Portland and here and other places, and that's what this is all about.
After a series of police-involved shootings of black Americans, cities across the United States have erupted in protest. 100 straight nights in Portland, Oregon, where Molotov cocktails were thrown Saturday. Police responded with tear gas.
I understand that they're tired, but at the same time, we're tired of you killing black people.
The protests and now counter-protests in every U.S. state were sparked by the death of George Floyd in Minneapolis, who died after a white police officer knelt on his neck for almost 9 minutes.
There's no question that we have seen an unacceptable incidents for generations of unarmed black men being killed. Nobody can deny that.
Harris says the facts are black Americans are arrested and prosecuted far more for the same offenses than white Americans. A recent ABC News Washington Post poll shows just how divided the country is. Nearly 9 in 10 black Americans are not confident police treat blacks and whites equally, while a majority of white Americans feel there is equal treatment. Jennifer Johnson, Global News, Washington.
A dangerous rescue operation is underway in California as the military and fire crews battle an explosive wildfire north of LA. The Creek Fire's roaring flames scorched a national forest near Fresno on Saturday. Terrifying footage shows campers trying to escape by car. Over 200 people have been airlifted to safety, with dozens hospitalized. The fire is 0% contained and one of 22 raging across California during a record heat wave. Japan is bracing for Typhoon Hyshen's full brunt, with winds forecast to reach 252 kilometers an hour. High waves are lashing the coast, and already strong winds have knocked out power for thousands of homes. Officials warn the typhoon may bring record rainfall and are recommending evacuations for the area. At least one police officer has been killed in a terror attack in Tunisia. The government says suspected Islamic militants rammed a vehicle into a checkpoint and then attacked the officers with knives. One died, another was injured. 3 of the attackers were killed in a shootout with security forces. It's unclear at this point if the attackers were tied to a particular extremist group. Coming up, the first election in Canada during COVID. Many Canadians are spending the Labor Day weekend enjoying the last of the summer break. But in New Brunswick, tens of thousands of people spent at least part of the holiday fulfilling their civic duty. New Brunswickers turned out in unusually high numbers for advanced polling. As Ross Lord explains, many were eager to avoid Election Day lineups because of the pandemic.
Before they conduct Canada's first general election of the pandemic, New Brunswickers are taking advantage of the option of voting early.
I thought I better get here before there's too big a lineup.
Advanced polls like this one in Rothsay report big increases in turnout compared to the previous election 2 years ago.
I usually actually come to the advanced polls because I'm a working mom, so it's actually kind of easier, but I'm surprised by how many people are at this time so early.
We are seeing lineups, which I would say is unusual for the first day of advance voting.
Elections NB is encouraging people to avoid even longer lineups on Election Day by voting early or by mail-in ballot. Organizers hope by limiting large clusters of voters, they help prevent the spread of COVID-19.
I suspect the pandemic has something to do with it, including the reason I'm here.
I'm not going to be available on one of the other times.
It's a nice day and avoid the crowd.
Polls suggest the Progressive Conservatives, under former Irving Oil executive Blaine Higgs, might turn their shaky minority government into a more comfortable majority. For those wondering if Canadians will take an interest in voting during the pandemic, The early indications from New Brunswick are encouraging.
So it is safe to vote, especially given the measures that Elections New Brunswick has put in place around social distancing, around face masks, around hand sanitizers.
The second chance to vote early comes on Tuesday. The New Brunswick general election is less than a week later on September 14th. Ross Lord, Global News.
There's a new baby announcement coming from the West Coast. The Pacific Whale Watch Association has confirmed Orca J35, better known as Tahlequah, has given birth. The new calf was spotted Saturday near the San Juan Islands. 2 years ago, Tahlequah caught the world's attention when she refused to let go of her dead calf for 17 days. It was a heartbreaking image. Still ahead, 3 Canadians are making Grand Slam history. Canada could be on the cusp of a new golden era of tennis. 3 rising stars made history by advancing into round 4 of the same Grand Slam. The 3 men, Felix Auger-Aliassime, Vasek Pospisil, and Denis Shapovalov, have all advanced into the 4th round of the U.S. Open. That's never happened at a Grand Slam before, but the 3 have another one to beat. No Canadian man has ever reached the competition's quarterfinals. Up next, the mega excitement over a mid-sized discovery in deep space. An Austrian man had to focus on keeping his cool while spending 2.5 hours in a box filled with ice. Wearing only swim trunks, Joseph Krabel was surrounded by more than 200 kilograms of ice cubes. He endured the wave of pain by focusing on positive emotions. His goal was to beat his own record, which he did by 30 minutes. An international team of researchers, including Canadian scientists, has made a major space discovery. They've detected a signal from what may be the most massive black hole merger ever observed. The collision created a new size of black hole, one that's never been seen before. And as Eric Sorensen explains, the discovery is being touted as a cosmic holy grail.
It happened so far away in space that its detection at all surprised scientists. The merging of 2 black holes more than 5 billion light years away. Black holes were once stars that went supernova, then collapsed into something so dense that nothing, not even light, can escape. When they collide and merge, gravitational waves burst out into space, the waves themselves only discovered a few years ago.
Gravitational waves, we're just now really starting to see what's out there in the darkness of deep space.
Jess McIver of the University of British Columbia is part of the international team plugged into enormous wave detectors, kilometers long, 1 in Europe, 2 in the United States. The waves, registered 16 months ago and now confirmed, are the most distant events ever detected directly from Earth.
This is the shortest event that's ever been registered in our gravitational wave detectors, which means it looks quite a lot like glitches, little blips of noise that you might see in the detector data stream.
The creation of a mid-sized black hole fills an important gap in understanding the forces at work in the universe.
It truly is incomprehensible. There is nothing humanity can do that even remotely approaches the amount of energy we're talking about here.
The Earth is tiny compared with our sun. The sun also dwarfs the size of a black hole formed by a collapsed star. But even that small black hole can have 70 times the mass of the sun. And there are enormous black holes, millions or billions of times more massive than the sun. What scientists have now discovered is being called the missing link. This mid-sized black hole formed from the 2 smaller black holes. It's 142 times the mass of our sun. Black holes that merge suggest one way massive black holes may form, and all of them are believed to play a role in the evolution of the galaxies.
By learning about the most massive stars and using black holes to tell us about them, we are learning about the origin of us.
Gravitational wave detectors on Earth are opening the skies to new discoveries and new understanding.
So it's sort of akin to inventing the telescope for the first time, where we're not necessarily entirely sure what we're going to see. So it's very, very exciting.
This is yet another piece of the jigsaw puzzle that talks about the evolution of the universe as a whole, not just stars and galaxies, but planets and life as well.
Gravitational waves suggest Einstein was right, that time and space can bend, and new tools and observations around black holes continue to turn his theories into scientific reality. Eric Sorensen, Global News, Toronto.
And that is Global National for this Sunday. I'm Robin Gill. Tonight, your Canada is Ula Haktok in the Northwest Territories. Thank you for sharing your time with us this long weekend. We hope to see you back here tomorrow. Have a great night.